screen with the buffing machine, and then swept all the dust off and came back and mopped the floors. Then you have to tape off your boundaries. This is where we're planning to stop the epoxy floors, so we need to put a straight edge right here. We also, on the other door, I tried foam tape, but we found that the painter's tape worked best. After you put the painter's tape down, make sure you come back with a roller like this, and that's going to get the tape tight against the slab and prevent any leakage. So after the floors have been taped off and cleaned off, the next step is to acid etch the slab. We used a mixture of 2 parts muriatic acid to 1 part water, and we applied it with a pump up sprayer. Make sure you do this in a circular motion so that you don't get any patterns on the concrete. If you do a fanning motion, you will definitely see that when you're done. If you can tell, I'm wearing a respirator as well as eye protection. This muriatic acid, when it hits that concrete, it has a reaction in it. It creates a lot of smoke, and it's I don't know if you ever smelled muriatic acid, but it's pretty nasty stuff. It'll make you cough, and I wouldn't be able to stand it if I wasn't wearing a respirator. So, do this evenly on the entire slab, and make sure when you're done that you let it dry. Right here on the edges, I just kind of run straight back and forth, try to stay away from that metal, because muriatic acid and metal do not get along. So make sure when it's done, when we come back to neutralize the acid, we make sure that we get it that we get a good coverage on that metal, and we wipe it down to prevent any rust from happening. The way we neutralize the acid is with a mixture of 1 part ammonia to 20 parts water. We after the floors dry, we'll come back with we'll rinse out the sprayer and put the ammonia mixture in the sprayer and apply it the exact same way that we are applying the acid. After we do that, we come back and we'll just rinse the slab with clean water. Here you can see the slab right after the acid has been applied. Again, we have to wait and clean it all off and neutralize it, and we have to wait until it's completely dry before we apply the epoxy. You do not want any water or any moisture on that slab before you apply the epoxy. Here you can see concrete that has not been etched, and it's pretty smooth. The reason for etching the concrete is to roughen up the surface to give us a better surface for the epoxy to adhere to. You can see we've been working on the floors for the house as well. They just need to be sealed. But anyway, here's the shop, and you can tell that for sure the difference on the roughness of the concrete. You're looking for about the equivalent of a 200 to 400 grit sandpaper, and that's going to give you the perfect adhesion. You can see, we can even see some small aggregate on that concrete. So anyway, this is what you're looking for. So now we mix the epoxy. We're using Arizona Polymer flooring epoxy 400. We mix part A in its own bucket before we dump it into the yellow bucket. Then we put part B into part A bucket, which is a small white bucket. Then we mix it in that small bucket. Then we dump it onto the yellow bucket to make sure we get it all out of that bucket. And then we add 10 ounces of acetone to thin it down. To apply the epoxy, you dump it right on the floor just like we're doing here, and then you come back with a notched squeegee. The one we're using has 1/8 inch notches on it, and that seems to work just perfect for this application. You want to get it on the floor as evenly as possible with that squeegee, and as you can see, it'll move the excess around, and because of the notches, it'll give just very consistent coverage. If you do not use a notched squeegee, you're going to get a lot of color variation because you're going to end up with a different epoxy coverage, and believe me, it does not look good. So use the squeegee, and you're going to get some really good results. Then, as you can see, we're going right up to the wall, and we're kind of making a mess, but it's all going to get trimmed out, so we're not worried about it. Then after you put the epoxy down with the squeegee, you have to back roll. This is going to get you the even coverage that you're looking for. As you can see, we're also bumping against the back wall, and again, we're not worried because that's all going to get wood, plywood over all that, so that's all going to get covered up. And instead, what we're doing with that back wall, if you can tell, every time we make a pass, we touch it, and that serves as a guide so that we don't miss any spots. It tells us exactly where we're at, and again, you know, you're looking for consistency. You don't want to miss any spots, because then you're going to be able to see it. Here you can see why we use the painter's tape. We go right over the tape, and when we are finished, we just pull the tape up, and it'll give us a perfectly straight finished edge. So this is what it looks like after the first coat. We have to give it enough time to cure, usually overnight, and before we can continue on to apply the second coat. Here you can see this is the second day. We're back, and what you're going to find is there's going to be a lot of air bubbles on the surface when you come back on the second day. That's normal. What happens is the epoxy goes into the pores in the concrete and evacuates the air out of the pores, but because the epoxy's thick, it doesn't let the air escape, and they show up as bubbles on the surface. So the way to deal with those bubbles is to go over the entire surface with a buffing machine using an 80 or 100 sanding screen. I think we used a 60 grit, and that's going to knock down all those bubbles, and then you just sweep up the dust that it's going to create, and you'll be ready to apply the second coat. You can see all those white spots, they were bubbles, so you can see there was a lot of them. So anyway, one way to get around that, all the bubbles, is to prime the concrete before the epoxy with like a polyurethane 250. But I prefer just to put the epoxy down and you know, just deal with the bubbles. As I prefer to put 2 coats of epoxy 400, just to give me a real nice color coverage. The forecast for today called for 20 to 30 mile-an-hour winds, so we had to build a temporary door because the overhead doors have not been installed yet. This is going to keep wind and mainly dust from blowing into the shop, but you know, those are some of the things that you have to overcome, and when you do projects like this one. So this is what it looks like after the second coat has been applied. As you can see, it's the color is very uniform, and so that's what we're looking for. So now we have to let it dry overnight, and then we'll come back and do a polyurethane clear coat over it. I didn't get any footage when we applied the clear coat on the shop floors, but this is the exact same technique that you would use. This is a dip and roll technique, and you come back and you cross roll it. This is polyurethane 250 from APF, and this is our first coat on the house floors, the stained floors, and then we're going to come back and do the P501 like we did on the shop. The reason I like the 501 over the P100 is because again, the 501 is water based, so it goes on white but it dries clear, and if you're trying to go clear over clear, it's really easy to miss a spot. Also, the 501 has a nice smell compared to the P100.